It is now our pleasure to introduce the new president of the Human Rights Campaign, Alphonso David.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Who are you? Who are you? Good. An immigrant, an American, or both? Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or straight? Black, white, Latinx, Asian, or Native American? We all have identities that deserve to be respected and celebrated. But today, we are at a crossroads in this nation where our identities will either serve as a tool to achieve liberation or as a tool to further oppress us. For the past several years, we have seen an increasingly disturbing painting. A painting reflected on our television screens and in our newspapers. A painting of history repeating itself. Places we've never seen for some young people, and for others, places that we never thought we would go back to. Slavery, miscegenation, sodomy laws, overt and unbridled government-sanctioned discrimination. Places that we thought were largely historical, limited to books and movies. But they're not. There has been and continues to be a widespread indifference and bigotry advanced through the highest halls of power, and a fundamental regression of our society. At the core of this moral recession is Donald Trump, Mike Pence, and their cadre of lieutenants. This federal administration is using playbooks of the past to turn us against one another. They have artfully sought to use our identities as a sword and create false hierarchies to force us into believing that we lose something by simply recognizing someone else as a human being. We have witnessed a dramatic rollback of our democracy at the hands of a president who holds the rule of law in contempt. He also holds national security in contempt, as we learned this week. And as we saw recently, he even holds weather reports in contempt. And you can tweet all of that. He is so radically divorced from reality, it actually takes the breath away. The truth is, this administration's path of destruction has been so vast, from separating families at the border and throwing immigrant children into iron cages, to fueling white supremacy, to attacking transgender troops, undermining protections for transgender students, rolling back years and years of progress, and effectively destroying our social fabric. As he fumbles from one self-inflicted crisis to the next, Trump is systematically seeking to turn us against each other and have us live in a state of fear. Donald Trump wants you to believe that you will lose something if you see the immigrant as a human being, if you see the transgender person as a human being, if you see the person living with HIV as a human being. He's correct. You are losing something. But it's not what he wants you to think. You are not losing your car or your job or your health care by seeing people as human beings. By adopting or acquiescing to Trump's baseless factionalism, we're losing something much larger and something much more significant than what Trump tells you. We're losing our souls. We're losing our government as a place that respects and represents all of us. We're losing our democracy as we know it. I submit to you that if we are going to weather this storm, this existential crisis that we face in this country, we must see beyond ourselves. See yourself in the bisexual black man living with HIV in the South, with little to no access to health care. See yourself as the young Latinx lesbian immigrant who is being brutalized and persecuted in her home country because of who she is and who she loves. See yourself as the black transgender woman who is literally fearful that she will die when she steps out of her home. See yourself as Dana Martin, Jazzaline Ware, Ashante Garmon, Claire Legato, Malaysia Booker, Michelle Tamika Washington, Paris Cameron, Chanel Lindsay, Chanel Sherlock, Zoe Spears, Brooklyn Lindsay, Danielle Berry Stuckey, Kiki Fantroy, Jordan Koffer, Pebbles LaDime Dime Doe, Tracy Single, Bailey Reeves, B. Love Slater. See yourselves in these 18 transgender people, primarily black transgender women who were killed this year in this country. In the past 7 years, there have been more than 150 transgender women killed in our country. Think about that and see yourself in them. Behind every anecdote and every statistic, there is a real person, and we must do more to transcend the artificial barriers that separate us. For me, and I hope for all of you, transcendence means action, not talk. We must put our time, our resources, and our support behind initiatives that work, and initiatives that communicate that we are all one community. We cannot have Donald Trump and Mike Pence dictate who we are. And when you do not stand up for the transgender community, or you do not stand up for the persecuted immigrant at the border, we are allowing them to define us. We must define ourselves, and define ourselves inclusively. And that is why I am committed to advancing initiatives that further break down barriers, because they're artificial, increase capacity, and send a strong message to all of those that are so division that we will not be torn apart. First, for the black transgender women who are living in crisis, their crisis must become our crisis as well. We must recognize that the killings of Black transgender women reflect a deep level of indifference and fear, and we must directly combat it. For too long, our system has failed the transgender community, and by depending on that system, we have also failed the transgender community. We must look outside of the existing paradigm to support transgender people in the communities that they call home. And that is why I am proud that the Human Rights Campaign is launching the Transgender Justice Initiative. First, we will build the capacity of transgender community members and leaders of color through 2 capacity-building programs. Second, we will leverage our strengths with our corporate and community partners to deliver new economic and training opportunities for transgender individuals. And third, we will transform communities by using all levers of local government to drive systematic change in areas that are most needed: public safety, healthcare, housing, education, and employment. And in doing all of this work, we will engage with local activists and advocates who have been on the front lines of addressing the range of barriers that put Black transgender women at risk. We need all of you to support this work. We need all of you to stand up, as you have done multiple times. When our community was attacked at Stonewall, when our community was attacked and left in hospitals to die of AIDS, when our community was denied the right to marry. When our community is attacked, when our community is in crisis, we must stand up. We have done it before, and we can do it again. And as we stand, we must also stand tall for one of the most fundamental rights that we have, the right to vote. We must fight against voter disenfranchisement, against voter suppression, and against the erosion of our democracy. We cannot win an election if we do not address the fact that many voters are being systematically suppressed from exercising their constitutional right to vote. Which is why tonight I am announcing that the Human Rights Campaign will be partnering with the rightful governor of Georgia, Stacey Abrams, yes, Stacey Abrams. The Human Rights Campaign will enter into a partnership with Stacey Abrams and her organization Fair Fight to combat voter suppression efforts that all too often target members of the community, including people of color, young people, and transgender people. Now, with this partnership, we fight to protect and support our right to vote. And in so doing, we can elect a pro-equality Senate that will follow the House's lead and pass the Equality Act. And we can elect a president who will sign it into law. Now, I have fought a lot of battles in my life. I fought a lot of arrogant New Yorkers. And Donald Trump, this is not in relation to my former boss. I love New Yorkers, and that's not him. I have a message for Donald Trump, a simple message. We are coming for you. Nancy Pelosi is coming for you. Chuck Schumer is coming for you. Every person who cares about equality, humanity, and civil society is coming for you. And one way or another, your time is up. And President Trump, if you don't know what that means, when someone comes for you, look it up in the LGBTQ dictionary. Our community of more than 3 million members and supporters of the Human Rights Campaign have never been more energized and focused, which is why on October 10th, the eve of National Coming Out Day, the Human Rights Campaign and CNN will host an historic primetime televised town hall devoted to LGBTQ issues, where we will have an opportunity to hear directly from Democratic presidential candidates about their plans for advancing equality. And to further strengthen our relationships with our corporate partners, our financial partners, and those in the entertainment sectors, the Human Rights Campaign will expand our footprint, and we will open offices in New York and Los Angeles. By working with all of our partners and thousands of members and supporters in these two epicenters of progressive activism, we will be even stronger. In this upcoming election and beyond, we are going to harness the full power of our communities, both LGBTQ people and our allies, and ensure that we are heard at the ballot box. Finally, we must protect our courts, and we have to fight for it. We can never lose sight of how central the judiciary has been in the struggle and in protecting the disenfranchised and the marginalized. And although Trump and Pence are working diligently to pack the courts, we will meet and ultimately best them in any arena, including the courts. We must continue to believe in the independence of our judiciary and in our Constitution. In just a few weeks, the United States Supreme Court will hear arguments in 3 landmark cases on whether we can continue to have protections from discrimination in the workplace. With this history in mind, the Human Rights Campaign will continue to fight in the courts. And this year, we will expand our legal footprint, and we will do impact litigation work. Working with all of our movement partners, we will advance cases both domestically and internationally as we expand the scope of HRC Global. Equality does not stop at our borders, Mr. Trump, and we cannot allow ourselves to be infected by your hypo-nationalism. We are part of a global equality movement, and as the world's largest LGBT organization, it is imperative that we stand and stand tall with our partners in nations around the world. As we embark on this journey, one thing is clear to me. To win, we must do it together. We cannot win this war against hate if we live in our silos. We cannot win this war against division by remaining divided. We cannot win this war against indifference by ignoring each other. We must unite and break down the barriers both within and outside of the LGBTQ community that too often allow some of us to forget about the rest of us. This movement must always be grounded in acceptance, because for many of us, acceptance is what we lacked when we needed it the most. As you saw in the video, I spent much of my early life in Liberia. After my family moved to the United States, my father told me, I told my father that I was gay. He got very angry and he disowned me. He told me he wished that I was never born. It took him years. But my father accepted that my sexual orientation was not something that I could change. I know that many of you have similar stories, or you know someone who does. And that is why there must be space and there must be room for everyone in this movement. Regardless of how we self-identify, we share a common dream, the dream of full equality. It is the dream that led Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera to fight back at Stonewall. It is the dream that led Harvey Milk to run for public office. It is the dream that led Edie Windsor and Jim Obergefell to fight discrimination all the way up to the Supreme Court. It is the dream that led each of you to get involved in this incredible organization. And it is the dream that brought me here tonight. The promise of this organization and the promise of this movement will be fully realized. As I stand before you as the first person of color to lead the Human Rights Campaign, thank you. Thank you. As I stand before you as the first person of color to lead this campaign in this nearly 40-year history, I promise you that I will fight as hard and as long as necessary to make the dream of full equality a reality for all of us. All I ask in return is that you make that same promise. As the late, great Toni Morrison said, the danger of losing humanity must be met with more humanity. When we come together as a people, when we strip away at artificial barriers, when we are bold and courageous and unapologetically ourselves, when we dig deep to see beyond ourselves and we see others for who they are as human beings, our power has no limits. And when you hear that voice of anxiety in the greater sea of courage, think of the millions of faces and the millions of voices that we lose if we don't stand up. Think about the dream of real democracy becoming a reality and how it can function for all. Think about how we can seize our country back. So I end where I started. Who are you? I say that whoever you are, however you identify, see yourself in me. See yourself in Dominique. See yourself in the person who looks nothing like you. Let our next greatest achievement be realizing the dream of full equality for all of us. And let it begin tonight, right here, in this room, with each and every one of us. Thank you.